can ask that the Secretary of State do, and we are in this bill asking the Secretary of State to do two things. One is if there are 5 or more proposals on the same topic, that the differences be clearly delineated. And the other is that signatures be reported as they reach 25%, 50%, and 75%. The other place where we can have some modest influence is at the title board. And so we are saying that it has to be clear whether this extends, modifies, or repeals existing law. And the final piece is at Ledge Council. We are asking that there be explicit wording about the changes in state and local revenue that will be brought about by the ballot measure. And why is all of this happening? And as Rep. Sirota indicated, we're just seeing a huge increase in the number of ballot measures. We are seeing multiple ballot measures from the same set of interests, and that's why we went with the 5 or more on the same topic. We are seeing a lot of false flags. Out of the 200, they range from seriousness to flippant, and that creates this sort of false flag that has people spinning their wheels. And it's important also that the fiscal impacts be explained in the ballot measures. And we saw that this year where we had, Madam JBC will attest to, where we had a ballot measure that cost us $350 million in a really, really tight budget year. And so these are the very issues that we're addressing, and we can't address really probably the biggest issue, which is the ability for big dollars to run ballot initiatives, hire signature gatherers, and buy the advertising, and achieve an outcome that is noticeably influenced by the dollars put into the measure. But as I said at the opening, where we can, we are trying to add transparency and efficiency to the ballot initiative review process, and we ask for a yes vote.
Members, any questions for our bill sponsors? I'm not seeing any. Oh, all right, Representative. It's okay. Representative Espinoza. Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify one point, and that is, my understanding is that we can't really control a requirement to have the impact of like the 300,000 and 130 part of the bill that you're proposing because of constitutional requirements. But is that true or not?
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question, Representative Espinoza. That was a question posed by some members over the interim, and the pretty swift response from Legislative Legal Services is that that would require a constitutional change due to the powers that the Constitution grants the citizen initiative process.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, ladies. Can you just talk a little bit more about how you envision the notice working at the 25, 50, and 75% mark, especially for volunteer citizen initiatives, such that the communication may not be as constant as with paid circulators?
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think our expectation is, whether it is completely volunteer run or paid, that there will be some monitoring of how that process is going. And this is an important part of the bill to help for planning purposes. My understanding is that DPA actually loans folks to the Secretary of State's office to complete this signature review process, which can be incredibly onerous, as was in this past year. We ended up having to give expenditure authority for over expenditures from the Secretary of State's office due to the number of signatures that they had to review during this process. And so this is extremely helpful for folks in terms of planning how many folks are we going to need, at what point are we going to need them, when are we predicting these things are coming in. So we expect that folks who are running a measure will keep account of how they're doing. And I don't anticipate that it would be, to the exact person. There's a whole petition that somebody has to gather, but as you are gathering, you should be paying attention to where you're at, or if you are stopping completely, which is another component of this, this section of statute.
Seeing no further questions, we're going to move on to the testimony phase. Before you all run, we do have 5 people signed up. I believe there are 3 against, 1 amend, and 1 in support. Do you have any opposition to just hearing a full panel?
No, but maybe we'll have our support go last.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's call up we have 4 people virtually and 1 person who is our lone supporter in person. So let's go ahead and call up Jeannie Rush. Of course, we'll hear from our support individual after those women have been heard. So let's start with Miss Jeannie Rush. Please come off mute, introduce yourself, and the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
I sent you a letter. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed with your testimony.
I sent you a letter and I'm not going to say any of it. I've been listening to all the testimonies and I'm so offended by Representative Bacon and all her talk about our racism and all this in our elections, when we do have fair elections. In the voting part, not so fair. In other words, for individual citizens, this bill ruins it for average citizens to be able to go through the title board without all kinds of restrictions. Where's the fine that the Secretary of State didn't get when 600 BIOS passwords were let out on the public? And where's the justice for Tina Peters, who is in jail because this body of legislation at the top has not been honest about the fraud? Bottom line is, I'm upset that I've heard you all accuse so many people of so many things, and I don't agree with any of what you're doing, not with 001, not with this, but worst of all, where's the fairness? You want to put fees on citizens trying to do their rights through the Constitution. You want to stymie them, but where's the fairness for the kids that were raped and you don't want to put those guys in jail, or the fentanyl people who have killed our kids all over the state, or all the other bills you've put through? We don't have justice here. We have criminals who haven't even all been elected, who are running us into the ground in this state. I'm so offended I could die. This is not right. You're not right. You all need to be in jail for what you're doing to this state. This is criminal. This is not constitutional, and we're a republic. We are not a democracy. I don't know what happened to you all, but you've lost your minds.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rush, for your testimony today. Your time has expired. We're going to move to Jody Nickerson now. Please introduce yourself and the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Jody Nickerson. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak today. This bill reduces the citizen power, adding bureaucratic hurdles. By adding an extra step seems to dilute the initiative, right? It shortens the already tight timeline for collecting signatures. Amendment K was given to the people in 2024, and this is a duplicate effort because you did not agree with the voters' decision. That says a lot about the sponsors' efforts and their writers trying to overreach the voters, their constituents. It seems the more you are being seen attacking your voters' rights proves how we should be making sure the message gets out to the citizens of Colorado. This is very bipartisan, though, this issue. Shouldn't be going this way. I feel you're being very deceptive with the fiscal note because the state is in such a disaster budget-wise, anything with a fiscal note will be denied or challenged this late in the game. Adding a hearing could raise cost for initiative campaigns, but favor well-funded groups, making the process less accessible to average citizens. With the legislator having such a strong partisan lean and the abundance of bills proposed this year alone, more citizens are becoming more aware of how this is going way overboard and allowing gatekeepers to potentially discourage measures they oppose. Adding a prior hearing risks muddying the clarity of the Blue Book process with early political framing. If hearings lead to legal challenges or rewording, we witness a cluttered ballot as seen in the 2024's 14 measures, what they called the ballotapalooza. This is in itself will be costly. Workload will increase with the upload of the additional tracking requirements. You can't say minimal costs. That means there is a cost and connected probably to Tabor, which opens another can of worms. Please vote this bill
Thank
no.
you very much, Ms. Nickerson. Your time has expired.
Thank
We're going
you.
to move now to Donna LaBelle. Please come off mute and the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Chair Wilford and committee members, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Donna LaBelle and I represent myself. Having had a chance to see the title board in action this last year was very interesting and helped me continue learning about things I had never heard of or knew anything about before COVID, which became a marker in a way and another BC for many people. In watching the journey of a ballot initiative, I learned that it is an arduous one, and for many reasons it should be, but I did get the impression that it is tilted in favor of the system in place and against everyday Coloradans who are affected by the results or the lack of them. Adding more requirements and shortening the deadline dates will further complicate and therefore discourage people from making the effort it takes, which is enormous. And like so many things, those with money and lawyers can breeze through the procedures while others without do not. I'm extremely thankful for the changes happening in our nation and efforts being made and orders put in place that aim to streamline the procedural quagmire that has slowed down productivity and even closed down small family-run businesses because of the onerous regulations and unnecessary requirements that only the elect few are able to fulfill. I am eager and expectant to see these kinds of changes happen here in Colorado. I'm quite confident they will, and they can't come too soon, as many people have left, many are planning to leave, and others are fearful they may need to because of the many burdens we have here in Colorado. I also believe the safety clause is in no way needed here for public peace, health, or safety, and wonder why it is used so often. I appreciate your attention and your passion for all you do, representatives. I keep you in my prayers, and I thank you for this time and ask you to please vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, Ms. Natalie Menton. Please come off mute and the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Natalie Menton. I'm representing myself. I've spent many, many years being a grassroots circulator. I used to joke that it would be a rare year when I didn't have a petition clipboard on the front seat of my car, carrying it with me. My issues have ranged from stopping eminent domain abuse to turning government fines to go to charity, to repealing grocery tax, many, many issues over many years. And this would alarm campaigns of every kind, whether they're left, right, or center. House Bill 1327 is yet another attack on our constitutional protected petition rights. After listening to the last hearing, the best way I can describe this is petition suppression. That is what it is. It shortens an already tight timeline for citizen initiatives by moving the title board deadline, as we've heard. But with Amendment K last year, that was going to reduce it by 1 week. This bill reduces it by 2 weeks. Amendment K was soundly defeated by voters. So why was that not heard here before this bill is being presented? And it's no wonder when our voice at the ballot is heard as such, and then it turns around and we've got a bill that's going to do twice what the rejected bill was going to do. I understand the desire to tighten up the blue book deadlines. I've been through the process enough times, I know. But trading a core constitutional right is not a pro-citizen solution. We've got a complaint of, well, let me just jump to the percentages. From a volunteer coordinator's position, you don't even tell volunteers that you're at 25, 50, or 75%. If you say, we're doing great, then they don't go out and get signatures. If you tell them we're behind, they don't go out and get signatures. You just don't do that. You say, go out and get more signatures. My time is already up. I'm happy to take questions.
So much for thank you for your testimony. And we will wrap up this panel with Ms. Tierney. Welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Martha Tierney here today on behalf of America Votes in support of House Bill 251327. And I'm going to start with responding to some of the concerns that have been raised. First, to Representative Espinoza's question, the right of initiative is in the Constitution, in the legislative Article 5, and it is allows the citizens to step into the shoes of the legislature. And so that is why you can't prohibit citizen initiatives from spending general fund money. The bill does not reduce the timeline for signatures. The deadline for signatures is still the first Monday in August. It does allow for a last rehearing, which currently under the title board calendar is required to, if the last title board is the third Wednesday in April, and the rehearings for that title board right now have to occur that very next day and sometimes Friday, because there's often a lot of them. This would push those rehearings out to the regular schedule for rehearing. It does not change the deadline, and respectfully, it just means that proponents of measures are going to have to start a little bit earlier to make sure that they have enough. If they want the full 6 months, you get 6 months to circulate, you should be in title board in February, not in April. And that's a choice for proponents, but it does not shorten the deadline on which signatures are due, which is what the Amendment K, or I don't know if it was Proposition or Amendment K, proposed. There is no added hearing. There is always a rehearing under the statute allowed after the last title board. This does not add an additional hearing. It just creates a different time window for that hearing instead of within 48 hours, 24 hours. Thank you. Sorry, my time is up. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Members, what questions do you have for our witnesses? Representative Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Minton, do signature collections look different for citizen-led ballot initiatives versus like big money-led ballot initiatives, in your opinion?
Ms. Minton.
Huge difference. And I will say, because it is so hard, so very hard to, through all the steps, let me just step to, give this a little bit of background because I've been through it. First, you have this window of time, which you have to come up with your draft. Then you go through the review and comment hearing. Then you have to wait because there's only certain days. You don't just get this stuff Monday through Friday. You then have to go through the title board. With all of that, you're just getting to the first part of this Mount Everest. You're like, maybe it's called base camp. I don't know. But then you got to climb this huge mountain. And there's this argument that people will have that only the big, deep pockets are the ones that are getting stuff on the ballot. Well, that's because the grassroots over and over are going, let's get together, let's do a citizen initiative. But then when you look at the process and the cost, you're like, oh my gosh, I work a regular job. How am I going to do this? So let me just say, the big campaigns, they've heard from 500 or 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 people who said, God, please help us. And so, yes, there is a difference, and it is nearly impossible for grassroots. It's been a long time since it was 100% volunteer signatures. There are people that are, they're working 8 to 5. They've got their kids. They've got the soccer game. They've got this. they can't stand in front of a grocery store or a Walmart getting signatures. It is one of the most, one of the hardest things. You will give up so many months of your life. And like I say, it's been a rare year when I don't have a clipboard on my front seat of my car, and I'm trying to gather them. And I mean, it literally makes me want to just tear up right now. It goes back to, I mean, we talked about some voter suppression and election suppression and all of that. And I really do appreciate trying to make our process better. And this bill is nothing less than it is voter suppression through the petition process guaranteed by Article 5. And no, we don't step in the role of the legislator. We are guaranteed the right to, I'm speaking to another comment, not yours, Representative Bradley. We're not stepping in the role of the legislature in that sense. Article 5 says we have the power to do this outside of the legislative assembly. And, I'll just say, even with the transparency, we don't get to see legislative bills when they're in their work product, which is like going through review and comment. So if some sponsors want to improve on transparency in the process, open up your bills as they're being drafted, because that's really when people are going through different versions through review and comment and they keep submitting, they're not doing it out of joy. They're doing it because they're refining it. And gosh, I could probably go for now. I'm a true petition rights advocate, and I'm sorry if I'm wordy, but I'm really, really passionate about our power. And this, again, it's right, left, center, whatever. This is we, the citizen power. And to suppress it with fines of $1,500 and less time to go through the title board, because there are people crunching at that end. So it ultimately is reducing your time on the road to get something on the ballot, because it's a huge amount. Huge.
I'm not seeing any other questions. I'm so sorry, Representative Luck. Please, ask your question.
Are you sure? Did you have one?
Yeah, I'll wait.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. My question is for you, Ms. Tierney. In terms of the legislature, the comment that you made and that Ms. Menton just responded to, related to the citizens stepping into the role of the legislature, it occurs to me that there is a resolution kind of on point to this, that if resolved in the way favorable to the sponsors of that resolution, would really put into question this entire initiative process and whether we even can have initiatives and still abide the U.S. Constitution. I'm just wondering if, in light of your comment, if you have anything to speak into whether or not on its face, the initiative process that Colorado has is constitutional under the U.S. Constitution.
Ms. Tierney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Luck. Yes, I think the initiative process is constitutional and that the citizens of Colorado can decide if they want to reserve that power to the citizens. And they have. And so, yeah, and many, many states have the power of initiative.
Representative Espinoza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up in terms of the stepping into the shoes of the legislature, I would just note that we as legislators can't encumber general funds or encumber funds without identifying a source under our current legislative process. And I guess, so when you say the citizens step into the legislative process, they are also encumbering funds at this point now in the most recent initiatives that we've seen, which seems to me is a step beyond the legislative process that you're talking about them stepping into, in that they are also then taking the power of the purse and telling the legislature that where we must spend that money. Do you have any thoughts on whether that does extend beyond what the constitutional allowances would be?
Ms. Tierney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Espinoza. The power of initiative includes the power of the purse in that sense. So while the many legislative bills just require that the funding come from the general fund, and that is the same with citizen initiatives. They can provide a funding source, and many do. They set up an enterprise or they do create a funding source, but many don't.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. I just wanted to I will make the last question then. Ms. Menton, I really appreciated your being so frank in talking about the ballot measure process and just how frustrating it is and how it's highly unlikely that a group of volunteers could get together and be able to circulate enough petitions to be able to get on the ballot and have the voters of Colorado make a determination as to, whether or not that ballot measure should be approved or not approved. I'm just curious from your perspective and your expertise, if not this bill, what do you think would make a difference, right, to balance out the competing interests of billionaires who have, all of these resources at their disposal to be able to put items on the ballot versus volunteers like yourself who have people power? What, from your perspective, would level the playing field?
We have, there's a draft available called the Petition Rights Amendment, and I have that and don't have it readily in front of me, so I'll give a summary of some of the things that would improve our petition process within Colorado. One is extending, as far as I know, there is no time limit within the constitutional right to initiate a petition. The legislature has put in a 180-day window of time. And when you think about petitioning, you are going to lose pretty much 2 months of that, one off the front and one off the end. So really you end up with about 4 months. That right there, expanding the window to, let's say, a year to gather your signatures, that would open up the door so much to us. There are these, really, I would call them artificial windows of time that have been set up through housekeeping bills, let's say, legislative actions, and they have not been pro-citizen. So if we extend to a year instead of the 6 months, which is really not 6 months, that would be one of the biggest advantages. And the time, I don't know why, I can't think of any reason why we couldn't do that. But that would be a starter. We could then more easily deal with going to review and comment. And there are so many issues that get thrown into, let's do a test run. Because I have citizens who call me up and go, I've got this idea and I want to do it. And I'm saying, okay, go start the process, draft your draft, go through review and comment, see if you're going to get any problems with single subject. So the window of time is one of the biggest ones. There's also games of tactics, and I'm going to say it's on both sides, where once you go through title board, this is, again, partly why you need so much time, is because there can be, the title board is going to set the wording and to, first of all, determine if it's single subject. So they're doing 2 tasks in the title board. There are so many different, there are many entities, let's just say, that will challenge the single subject more commonly, or perhaps the wording, and then they will go to the Colorado Supreme Court, and with a priority, the Supreme Court will then hear that within about a month's worth of time, maybe 6-8 weeks. That holds it all up. Now, I don't dispute challenging it through the Supreme Court, because frankly, I've done it myself. But if we had that window of time of 1 year, then those challenges can be brought out. And if you've got a serious problem, then again, you've got this thing that many people have to use to say, okay, I don't just get to go to the title board and change this. I have to start all the way over again with review and comment, wait for your turn, then go to title board, the extension of time is one of the greatest things that we could add to our process, so that those who are using their constitutional right are not cheated and suppressed. Like, that is the purpose of this here. It is suppression. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that insight. With that, thank you to this panel for your testimony. Last call, anybody that wishes to provide testimony on this bill, come forward at this time. Okay, with that, the testimony phase is now closed.
Madam Chair, I move L1 to House Bill 1327.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Foray. Tell us about the amendment. Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This, I know it sounds annoying, but it really is a technical amendment to make sure that the language that, this was actually proposed language that the JBC was looking at to run the bill regarding the maximum amount language related to revenue raising measures and what had to be presented. And this is, compliant with what Tabor calls for. And it was a bill we were looking at running at the JBC. And since this was already happening, we decided to put it into this bill. And when that happened, this is correcting how it should read. It's not doing anything different.
All right, any questions, comments from the committee? Any objection to adopting Amendment 1? Seeing no objection, Amendment 1 is adopted. Any further amendments? No? All right, the amendment phase is now closed. Bill wrap-up. Representative Froelich.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, committee. I found myself agreeing with a lot of the testimony from folks that are frequent flyers in this committee who I don't normally agree with. I have tremendous appreciation for citizen-led ballot initiatives. I have carried many, 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 many petitions. The big money ones, less so, and it's a stark contrast. And we find tremendous success with local school board and local school bonds and mill levies, and we can use our shoe leather to make a difference in our community. And when we go statewide, moneyed interests are able to really be much more influential. And as a legislator, I've sacrificed bills in negotiations against well-funded ballot initiatives, and that was anti-democratic and anti-citizen. And so this bill asks for transparency and efficiency in the process. It nibbles at the edges, but I do think it makes a difference, and I ask for an aye vote.
Do you want to go ahead, Representative Sirota?
If you want her to move the
You can give your comments and then she can move it, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be brief. I think, yes, this bill is not moving mountains by any stretch, but it is, we are taking some important steps forward in ensuring more transparency in this ballot measure process, which I think still remains fairly opaque to the general public. And so I would ask for your yes vote in making these small little incremental changes to encourage that transparency and easing of the process for those who have to make this process work.
Representative Froelich.
Are we going to the cow?
Yes.
I move House Bill 1327 as amended to the Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Well done, Representative Carter. Committee, what comments, wrap-up comments? Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, ladies. I think there are a lot of areas where we can agree in this space. I struggle with the percentage reports, especially for volunteer-led petition drives. I know how hard it is to get people to turn in their petitions all at once at the end, much less having them do it regularly throughout and all of the ways that works. And it's different when you're being paid for it, but when you're a volunteer and you were given a stack and you've now dispersed them out, and I don't feel comfortable about that part, so I'll be a no today.
Representative Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would second that. Ms. Minton has definitely been in this space for a long time and has committed a lot of her life to ballot-led initiatives, and I love that about Colorado. I also struggle with the fee. I mean, these big donors that have millions of dollars that we see all over Colorado that lead a lot of these ballot initiatives, fine, $1,500 is a drop in the bucket, but for a lot of these, volunteer-led groups, $1,500 is a big fee for them, so I'm struggling with that as well.
Any other wrap-up comments? Okay, I guess there's no other wrap-up comments. I really appreciate the bill that you all brought forward. You know, I know I've said this to you outside of this committee room, but I wish that the bill could go further. I know in my experience as a legislator, I've been really frustrated by the constant threat of ballot measures if we don't take whatever deal is on the table. And I'm also have been really incensed over the years that, you know, people who have never been elected and never have to look a constituent in the eyes and hear about the impact of a potential ballot measure or an impact of a policy that's been implemented but has $1 billion can go forth and do whatever they want, literally wreaking havoc on our state budget, or on our state policy and what we're trying to achieve as a state. And so I appreciate that you're putting some guardrails on the ballot measure process, and I believe that we have to do more because, you know, to some of the testimony we heard, it's not a citizens ballot measure process anymore. It's a game of who has the deepest pockets, and that's wrong. That's not democracy. So I will support the bill tonight and do look at running future legislation to further address the issue that we have on our hands. With that, Ms. King, please poll the committee.
Representatives Bottoms,
No.
Bradley.
No.
Carter.
Yep.
Espinoza.
Yes.
Foray.
Yes.
Froelich. Luck.
No.
Mabry. Yes. Ricks.
Yes.
Clifford.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes, congratulations. You are on your way to the Committee of the Whole, House Bill 1320.